Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into the world of WarGames, the 1983 techno-thriller that had audiences on the edge of their seats with its gripping story, cutting-edge technology, and thought-provoking themes. Starring Matthew Broderick, this film blended Cold War tensions with the emerging world of computer hacking, making it one of the most influential sci-fi thrillers of its time. The story follows David Lightman, a high school computer whiz who accidentally hacks into a U.S. military supercomputer, thinking it's an advanced gaming system. Unknowingly, he starts a countdown to global thermonuclear war, forcing him to race against time to convince the authorities that it's all just a simulation. With the help of his friend Jennifer and the brilliant yet reclusive Dr. Falken, David must find a way to stop the machine before it's too late. More than just an exciting movie, WarGames had a real-world impact, influencing cybersecurity policies and raising awareness about the dangers of artificial intelligence in warfare. Stay tuned as we explore 19 things you never knew about this groundbreaking film. 1. The origin of WarGames. Inspired by Stephen Hawking, some of the best movies start with a simple idea, and WarGames is a perfect example. The original concept for the movie was titled The Genius, inspired by a documentary about the brilliant physicist Stephen Hawking. Co-writer Lawrence Lasker was fascinated by the idea of a man with profound knowledge that could change the world, but who was trapped in a body that prevented him from communicating freely. This led to the initial version of the script, which paired a wheelchair-bound genius with a teen prodigy who was still discovering his own potential. While this concept evolved into what we now know as WarGames, its intellectual roots remain embedded in the film's themes of intelligence, technology, and unintended consequences. Point 2. Collaboration between Lasker and Parks. In 1979, Lawrence Lasker and Walter F. Parks, both Yale alumni, embarked on a collaborative journey that would eventually lead to the creation of the iconic film WarGames. Their partnership was not just a meeting of minds but a fusion of shared interests and complementary talents. Co-writer Lawrence Lasker's fascination with Stephen Hawking's genius and the heartbreaking reality of his ALS diagnosis led Lasker to conceive of a story about a dying scientist and a rebellious but gifted teenager, a story that explored the transmission of profound knowledge from one generation to the next. Upon sharing this concept with Parks, the idea began to evolve. Parks, intrigued by the emerging subculture of computer enthusiasts and the burgeoning field of artificial intelligence, saw an opportunity to weave these elements into the storyline. Together, they envisioned a narrative that not only delved into human relationships but also highlighted the ethical and existential dilemmas posed by advanced technology. These guys didn't just guess their way through writing the script, they went all out, consulting real hackers and military experts to make sure the story felt authentic. This dedication to realism and depth added layers of complexity to their story, setting it apart from other films of the era. With the support of producer Leonard Goldberg, Lasker and Parks transformed their innovative ideas into a compelling screenplay. Their combined efforts resulted in WarGames, a film that not only entertained audiences but also provoked thoughtful discussions about technology, ethics, and the potential consequences of human actions in the digital age. Their partnership exemplifies how collaborative creativity, grounded in thorough research and a willingness to explore uncharted territories, can lead to groundbreaking storytelling that resonates across generations. Point 3. Real-life hacking in WarGames. From experts to actual tricks. Before WarGames hit the big screen, Hollywood's portrayal of hacking was often limited to scenes of people mindlessly typing on keyboards. But Lasker and Parks were determined to make their depiction more realistic. They didn't rely on imagination alone, they sought out real-life hackers for advice. Among the experts they consulted was John Captain Crunch Draper, a hacker who discovered how to manipulate phone systems using a toy whistle found in a cereal box. They also reached out to David Scott Lewis, who gained notoriety for bypassing early computer security systems. This collaboration helped WarGames become one of the first films to accurately portray hacking, moving beyond random gibberish on a screen to a more credible depiction of real-world techniques. And speaking of real-world tactics, some of the movie's most famous hacking tricks weren't just made up, they were inspired by genuine methods. One of the standout moments is when David sets the number of players in Joshua's tic-tac-toe game to 0, causing the system to enter an infinite loop, realizing that some games just can't be won. This wasn't just a cool plot twist, but a clever nod to how hackers think, finding and exploiting loopholes in systems that weren't meant to be there. Point 4. Dr. Falken's character was originally modeled on Hawking. The original character concept for Dr. Falken was a wheelchair-bound genius. John Lennon was initially considered for the role, but after his tragic death, John Wood was cast instead. Point 5. Director Martin Brest removed Dr. Falken's wheelchair. When director Martin Brest came on board, he decided to ditch the wheelchair idea. Why? He was worried people would compare the character to Dr. Strangelove, the eccentric scientist from the 1964 Cold War satire. Instead, Falken was rewritten as a bitter, reclusive genius who had lost faith in humanity, kind of a modern-day J. Robert Oppenheimer, the scientist behind the atomic bomb. Point 6. A real-life incident convinced the writers of their story's plausibility. While developing the script for WarGames, writers Lawrence Lasker and Walter F. Parks grappled with a pressing concern: would audiences find their story believable? The plot hinged on the idea that a young hacker could inadvertently trigger a sequence of events leading the U.S. military to mistake a simulation for a real nuclear attack. This premise seemed far-fetched, even in the technologically advancing world of the early 1980s. However, reality soon provided a startling validation. On November 9, 1979, a significant incident occurred that mirrored their fictional narrative. A technician at the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, in Cheyenne Mountain had inadvertently inserted a training tape into a computer system. This tape simulated a massive Soviet missile launch against the United States. The system, interpreting the simulation as an actual attack, transmitted warnings across various U.S. military command centers, including the Pentagon and the Strategic Air Command. For several tense minutes, military officials believed they were under genuine attack, leading to heightened alert procedures. Fortunately, radar systems did not corroborate the missile launches, and the alarm was identified as false before any drastic measures were taken. This real-world event, where a simple human error nearly led to catastrophic consequences, profoundly impacted Lasker and Parks. It underscored the plausibility of their storyline and highlighted the fragile nature of reliance on automated systems in military operations. The incident not only reinforced their narrative but also emphasized the broader theme of WarGames, the precarious balance between human judgment and technological dependence in matters of national security. The media coverage of the 1979 false alarm brought significant attention to the vulnerabilities within the U.S. defense system. Publications debated the risks of automated warning systems and the potential for accidental nuclear war. This discourse resonated with the themes Lasker and Parks were exploring, providing them with both validation and a timely backdrop for their screenplay. When WarGames was released in 1983, audiences were struck by its timely relevance. The film tapped into existing anxieties about the rapid advancement of technology and its integration into military protocols. Viewers and critics alike praised its insightful commentary on the potential pitfalls of automated defense systems. The narrative, once questioned for its believability, was now lauded for its prescient reflection of real-world events. In retrospect, the 1979 NORAD incident served as a sobering reminder of the thin line between fiction and reality. It highlighted the importance of human oversight in automated systems and the ever-present risk of miscommunication or error leading to unintended escalation. WarGames encapsulated these concerns, making it not just a cinematic thriller but also a poignant commentary on the complexities of modern warfare and the ethical considerations of technological advancement. Point 7. Studios initially struggled to accept the story. It's hard to imagine now, but WarGames, a movie that became a cultural phenomenon, influenced cybersecurity policies, and remains one of the most iconic tech thrillers of all time, almost never got made. When producer Leonard Goldberg first pitched the script to Hollywood studios, most executives didn't take it seriously. They found the premise too unbelievable, too risky, and too complicated to connect with mainstream audiences. At the time, in the early 1980s, the concept of hacking was still new, and computers weren't yet a major part of everyday life. Studio executives struggled to understand the central premise of the film: could a teenager really hack into a US military system and nearly start World War III? To them, it seemed far-fetched, even for a science fiction movie. Films about Cold War tensions were usually serious dramas or spy thrillers, not teen-centric adventure films. And the idea that a machine, not a human, could decide the fate of the world felt like pure Hollywood fantasy. Until real-world events would later prove otherwise, many studios rejected the script outright, unsure of how to market it. Some executives thought it was too technical, worrying that audiences wouldn't understand the world of modems, hacking, and artificial intelligence. Others thought it lacked the high-energy action of a traditional thriller. There was even concern that a film about a teenager hacking into NORAD could be seen as anti-military, making it a tough sell during the height of Cold War patriotism. Despite these hurdles, Goldberg believed in the story. He continued pushing the script, confident that the combination of teen adventure, high-stakes suspense, and cutting-edge technology would resonate with audiences. Eventually, United Artists took the risk and agreed to produce the film. They hired Martin Brest as the director, seeing his talent for blending intelligent storytelling with commercial appeal. But even after the studio gave the green light, WarGames still faced challenges. Brest's darker, more intense vision for the film clashed with the studio's preference for a lighter, more entertaining tone, which eventually led to him being replaced by John Badham. Badham, with his background in fast-paced, audience-friendly storytelling, helped steer the movie into the perfect balance between thrilling and accessible. 8. Conflict between Brest's dark vision and the studio's lighter approach. Brest envisioned WarGames as a dark thriller, which clashed with the studio's preference for a more adventurous and light-hearted tone. This conflict led to his replacement. 9. Some of Brest's work remained in the final film. Though Brest was replaced, two of his filmed scenes, David visiting two computer nerds and stopping at a payphone, remained in the final cut. 10. General Beringer was based on a real NORAD commander. The character of General Beringer was inspired by NORAD commander James Hardinger, whom the writers met during a tour of the Cheyenne Mountain Complex. 11. Matthew Broderick trained for his role with typing and arcade games. To enhance realism, Broderick learned to type and was given a Galaga arcade machine to practice for his gaming scenes. 12. The iconic Lakeside scene was added later to add emotional depth. Screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz wrote the Lakeside scene where David and Jennifer share their fears and regrets before sharing a kiss. 13. Improvised lines created some of the film's best moments. Director John Badham encouraged improvisation, leading to the famous line, "I'd piss on a spark plug if I thought it'd do any good," delivered by General Beringer. 14. Joshua's voice was created in an unusual way. One of the most memorable and chilling elements of WarGames is the voice of Joshua, the military supercomputer that nearly brings the world to nuclear annihilation. Unlike the exaggerated, overly dramatic AI voices seen in many sci-fi films of the time, Joshua's voice is calm, detached, and eerily emotionless, which makes it even more unsettling. But what makes it truly fascinating is how it was created in a completely unexpected way, one that gave it its uniquely robotic yet oddly human quality. He initially considered using a child's voice, believing that it would add an extra layer of eeriness to the AI, making it seem like a ghostly echo of Dr. Stephen Falken's deceased son, a tragic undertone that would have tied into the film's themes of loss and artificial intelligence mimicking human emotion. However, after experimenting with the concept, Badham felt that a child's voice sounded too unnatural, even for an AI. Instead, he decided to go in a completely different direction, one that made Joshua's voice not just unsettling but truly iconic. Badham turned to John Wood, the actor who played Dr. Falken, and asked him to record Joshua's lines, but with a bizarre twist. Instead of just speaking them in a monotonous tone, Wood was instructed to read all of Joshua's dialogue backward. Yes, backward. This unconventional technique forced Wood to focus on pronouncing each word separately and without natural intonation, stripping away all human emotion. The recordings were then reversed and digitally processed, resulting in a voice that sounded mechanically precise, slightly unnatural, yet still distinctly human. Joshua's voice became a crucial part of WarGames' lasting impact, influencing how AI voices were portrayed in movies and pop culture for decades. The idea of an AI speaking in a neutral, detached tone, rather than in a dramatically menacing or overly mechanical voice, can be seen in later films like 2001, A Space Odyssey's HAL 9000, Her Samantha, or even today's real-world AI assistants like Siri and Alexa, which intentionally avoid sounding too robotic. Audiences were both fascinated and unnerved by Joshua's voice. Many viewers at the time had never heard anything like it, and its eerie, matter-of-fact delivery made simple lines, like, "Shall we play a game?" stick in their heads long after they left the theater. In fact, even today, decades after WarGames was released, Joshua's voice remains one of the most recognizable AI voices in film history. 15. The war simulation scene was technically challenging. Filming the climax, where Joshua runs nuclear war simulations, required 12 projectors working simultaneously, long before CGI made such effects easier. 16. The expensive NORAD set was a creative interpretation. Since the filmmakers had no access to the real NORAD, they spent $1 million creating a fictionalized version, which director Badham called NORAD's wet dream of itself. 17. President Reagan's fascination with the film led to real cybersecurity policies. Movies have a way of leaving an impact on culture, but few films have had the real-world consequences that WarGames did. When it was released in June 1983, audiences were drawn to its thrilling mix of hacking, Cold War paranoia, and artificial intelligence. But what no one could have predicted was that WarGames would change the course of U.S. national security policy forever, all because of one man, President Ronald Reagan. At the time, the United States was deep in the Cold War, and nuclear tensions with the Soviet Union were at an all-time high. Reagan, a former actor himself, was known for watching movies at Camp David, the presidential retreat. When WarGames was recommended to him, he sat down for a private screening, expecting an entertaining film about a rebellious teenager and some military computer mishaps. But what he saw deeply unsettled him. The idea that a high school hacker could accidentally gain access to a military supercomputer and almost trigger global thermonuclear war wasn't just a thrilling story, it felt alarmingly real. A few days later, during a high-level national security meeting, Reagan turned to his top military advisors, including General John Vesey Jr., chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and asked a simple but chilling question: could something like this really happen? At first, his team dismissed the idea, treating it as a far-fetched Hollywood scenario. But Reagan wasn't satisfied with that answer. He ordered an investigation into whether a WarGame-style cyber attack was actually possible. What the investigators found was far worse than anyone expected. The report confirmed that the U.S. military's computer networks were shockingly vulnerable to hacking. At the time, cybersecurity as a concept barely existed, and military systems often had little to no protection against unauthorized access. Even more alarming, hackers had already breached military and government networks in the past, including a case where a group of teenagers had successfully infiltrated the Pentagon systems using nothing more than a dial-up modem. The fictional scenario in WarGames wasn't just plausible, it was already happening in real life. Reagan was deeply concerned by this revelation. If a teenage hacker could unintentionally break into a military computer system, what could hostile nations or cybercriminals do? It was clear that urgent action was needed. That's why, in 1984, Reagan issued National Security Decision Directive 145, NSDD 145, the first official U.S. cybersecurity policy. This directive recognized that computer networks were a new battlefield and introduced government regulations to secure classified and sensitive systems. When the story of Reagan's WarGames-inspired policy shift became public, it sparked a media frenzy. Newspapers and TV networks reported on how a Hollywood movie had exposed real-world security flaws, leaving many Americans stunned. Cybersecurity experts praised the government's new focus on protecting computer networks, while hackers and tech enthusiasts felt validated. After years of being ignored, their concerns were finally being taken seriously. Beyond influencing national security, WarGames changed the way people thought about computers. In the early 1980s, personal computers were still a novelty, mostly used by hobbyists and researchers. But after WarGames, the idea that computers were powerful, dangerous, and deeply connected to global security became part of the public consciousness. The film's portrayal of hacking also inspired an entire generation of young programmers, many of whom went on to become leaders in the tech industry. 18. WarGames was a huge box office success. Released on June 3, 1983, WarGames emerged as a sleeper hit, captivating audiences with its innovative blend of technology and suspense. With an impressive $79.6 million at the U.S. box office, WarGames became the fifth highest-grossing film of 1983, not bad for a movie with a $12 million budget. The film's success is particularly noteworthy considering its modest production budget of $12 million. This impressive return on investment underscores the film's widespread appeal and the effectiveness of its marketing strategy. Critically, WarGames was lauded for its engaging narrative and timely themes. Renowned critic Roger Ebert described it as an amazingly entertaining thriller and one of the best films so far this year, highlighting its compelling storyline and suspenseful execution. Audience reactions mirrored the critical acclaim. Many viewers were captivated by the film's exploration of computer technology and its potential implications. Discussions on platforms like Reddit reflect a nostalgia for the film's ambitious practical effects and its ability to evoke a sense of wonder, even decades after its release. The film's impact extended beyond the box office. It played a significant role in popularizing concepts related to computer hacking and cybersecurity, influencing both public perception and policy discussions. Notably, WarGames is credited with bringing attention to the vulnerabilities in computer networks, leading to increased awareness and the eventual development of cybersecurity measures. WarGames not only achieved commercial success but also left a lasting imprint on both popular culture and the burgeoning field of computer technology. Its blend of entertainment and thought-provoking themes continues to resonate with audiences, cementing its status as a seminal film of the 1980s. 19. A sequel and video game adaptation were released. When a movie like WarGames becomes a cultural phenomenon, it's only natural for Hollywood and the gaming industry to try and expand its legacy. Given its tech-heavy, hacker-centric plot, WarGames was a perfect candidate for a video game adaptation, and as the years passed, the demand for a sequel also grew. However, while the original film was a groundbreaking success, its follow-ups failed to recapture the magic of the 1983 classic. Just a year after WarGames hit theaters, a video game adaptation was released in 1984 for several platforms, including ColecoVision, Commodore 64, and Atari 8-bit computers. Unlike action-based arcade games of the time, this adaptation was a real-time strategy game, putting players in control of NORAD's defense system. While the game received decent reviews, it wasn't a massive hit, largely because strategy games weren't as popular in the mid-1980s as they are today. However, it stood out as an early attempt at an AI-driven, decision-based war simulation, making it ahead of its time. For years, fans speculated about a proper sequel to WarGames. Given the rise of the Internet, hacking culture, and AI advancements, many believed that a modernized version of WarGames could be even more relevant than the original. In 2008, MGM attempted to revive the franchise with WarGames, The Dead Code, a direct-to-DVD sequel. Unlike the original, this sequel introduced a new protagonist, Will Farmer, a talented hacker who unwittingly attracts the attention of a new AI system named Ripley. Much like Joshua in the first film, Ripley is a government-created AI designed to detect cyber threats, but it mistakenly identifies Will's actions as an act of cyber terrorism. As a result, Will finds himself on the run, forced to outsmart a ruthless, self-learning AI system while uncovering the truth behind Ripley's growing power. While the premise had potential, The Dead Code failed to capture the essence of the original WarGames. The film suffered from low-budget production, weak writing, and a lack of the original cast, most notably Matthew Broderick's absence. Instead of focusing on intelligent, thought-provoking themes about AI and nuclear deterrence, the sequel played out like a generic cyber thriller, filled with predictable chase sequences and outdated hacking tropes, fans were deeply disappointed. Many felt that the sequel missed the entire point of the original film, reducing WarGames to a formulaic government conspiracy story rather than an intellectual exploration of technology, ethics, and unintended consequences. As a result, the film received overwhelmingly negative reviews and quickly faded into obscurity. After the disappointment of WarGames, The Dead Code, fans began calling for a proper reboot or sequel that would do justice to the original film's legacy. With advancements in AI, cybersecurity, deepfake technology, and government surveillance, the WarGames concept has never been more relevant than it is today. Several ideas have been pitched over the years, including a Netflix or HBO miniseries that could expand on the film's themes in a longer, more in-depth format. Given the success of similar tech-driven shows like Black Mirror, it's clear that audiences are hungry for intelligent, well-crafted stories about the risks of unchecked technology. While WarGames successfully inspired a video game and a sequel, neither fully captured the impact of the original film. The 1984 video game was a fascinating attempt at early real-time strategy gaming, but it was limited by the technology of its time. The legacy of WarGames, however, is still alive. The film's message about the dangers of AI and automated warfare remains as relevant today as it was in 1983. With the right creative team, a new WarGames film or series could be an instant hit, offering a fresh, modern take on hacking, cybersecurity, and AI ethics in today's world. Until then, WarGames will continue to be one of the most influential tech thrillers ever made, a film that not only entertained but also warned us about the very future we are now living in. And there you have it, 19 things you never knew about WarGames. From its origins as a Stephen Hawking-inspired drama to its influence on U.S. cybersecurity policies, this film has left an undeniable mark on both Hollywood and the real world. Even decades later, WarGames remains a relevant and thrilling look at the power, and dangers, of technology. So, the next time you sit down to play a game, just remember, the only winning move is not to play. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on more behind-the-scenes facts about your favorite classic movies. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.